It was a crisp autumn evening in the heart of the dense Alaskan wilderness. Golden leaves swayed gently in the wind, casting long shadows over the small wooden cabin nestled near the edge of the forest. Inside, a warm glow flickered from the fireplace where Sarah and her husband, Michael, sat on the couch, watching over their 6-month-old baby, Noah. Life had been peaceful in their remote home, where they had chosen to live away from the hustle and bustle of city life. Michael had always loved the wilderness, and Sarah, despite her initial hesitation, had come to appreciate the beauty and tranquility of their secluded life. The couple had grown used to seeing wildlife near their home, deer passing through, foxes prowling at dawn, and the occasional black bear wandering near the river. But what happened that night was unlike anything they had ever witnessed. Just as Sarah was about to put Noah to bed, she heard something unusual outside. A soft rustling followed by heavy, deliberate footsteps. Michael noticed it too, his body tensing as he set down his coffee cup. "Did you hear that?" she whispered. Michael nodded, already moving toward the window. He pulled the curtain back slightly and peered into the darkness. His breath caught in his throat. There, just a few feet from their front porch, stood a massive brown bear. Sarah gasped and instinctively clutched Noah closer to her chest. "Is it?" Michael held up a hand, signaling her to stay quiet. This was not the first time they had seen a bear, but something about this one was different. The bear wasn't alone. Lying at its feet was a small, motionless cub. The mother bear's eyes glowed in the dim porch light, filled with something Michael had never seen before: desperation. The great creature let out a low, mournful sound, nudging the cub with her nose. The baby bear didn't respond. "She's grieving," Michael murmured. "But why is she here?" Sarah whispered. "Why come to us?" Michael had no answer. The mother bear looked up at them then, her massive frame towering in the moonlight, her thick fur ruffled by the evening breeze. Her deep dark eyes met Michael's, and for a moment, it almost felt like she was trying to communicate. Then, slowly, she pushed the cub closer to their doorstep. A shiver ran down Sarah's spine. "Michael, she's leaving it here." Michael hesitated for only a moment before stepping toward the door. "Are you crazy?" Sarah hissed. "You can't just—" But Michael had already opened the door slightly. He remained still, watching the mother bear carefully, trying to understand her intent. The bear didn't growl, she didn't charge. She simply stood there, breathing heavily, eyes filled with sadness. Then, with one final nudge to her cub, she turned and lumbered back into the trees. Michael exhaled. He took a cautious step forward, glancing down at the baby bear. Its fur was a soft golden brown, its tiny body rising and falling with shallow, struggling breaths. "It's still alive," Michael said, his voice barely above a whisper. Sarah hesitated, conflicted. Everything she knew about wild animals told her that interfering was dangerous. But another part of her, the part that had become a mother just months ago, couldn't ignore the sight of the helpless cub. "What do we do?" she asked. Michael knelt beside the small bear and carefully lifted it into his arms. "We help it." Sarah's heart pounded as she followed Michael back inside, shutting the door behind them. Little did they know this was just the beginning of an extraordinary journey, one that would test the limits of love, compassion, and the unbreakable bond between species. The warmth of the cabin wrapped around Michael and Sarah as they stepped inside, the tiny cub cradled carefully in Michael's arms. The soft crackle of the fireplace provided a comforting background hum, but Sarah couldn't shake the unease, pressing against her chest. She had never been this close to a wild animal before, let alone one as vulnerable as this. Why had the mother bear left it here? Was it truly a plea for help? Or was there something else at play, something they didn't understand? Noah, nestled in his crib by the fire, babbled softly, his bright eyes locked onto the new visitor. "Your baby bear," whimpered weakly in Michael's grip, barely moving. "She trusted us," Michael murmured, gently placing the cub onto a thick woolen blanket on the couch. "She wouldn't have left it if she didn't believe we could help." Sarah hesitated. "What if it doesn't survive?" Michael's jaw tightened. He grabbed his stethoscope, an old remnant from his medical training, before he became a wildlife biologist, and pressed it gently against the cub's tiny chest. The rhythm of its heartbeat was weak, unsteady. "It's malnourished," Michael said after a moment. "Dehydrated. It might not make it through the night." Sarah swallowed hard. Her motherly instincts kicked in as she knelt beside the small animal, brushing a hand over its soft fur. "What do we do?" Michael stood and grabbed his medical kit. "First we hydrate it." He disappeared into the kitchen and returned moments later with a dropper filled with warm sugar water, the safest way to rehydrate small mammals. He carefully tilted the cub's mouth open and squeezed a few drops onto its tongue. At first, nothing happened. Then, a faint, shuddering breath. Sarah let out a sigh of relief. The cub stirred slightly, its tiny paws twitching against the blanket. It was still weak, but there was hope. Noah, still watching from his crib, cooed softly. The baby bear's ears flicked toward the sound, though its eyes remained closed. Michael smiled slightly. "Looks like Noah's got a new friend." Sarah didn't respond, but deep down she felt something stir inside her, a strange feeling that this moment was more significant than she could understand. As the night stretched on, they took turns caring for the cub. Drop by drop, it took in more fluids. By dawn, its breathing had steadied, and though it was still too weak to move much, it was alive. Michael exhaled in relief. It made it through the night. Sarah rubbed her tired eyes. And the mother bear? Michael peered out the window. The forest was still, no sign of her. Sarah wrapped her arms around herself. "Do you think she's gone for good?" Michael didn't answer, but deep in his heart he knew she was still out there, watching, waiting, hoping. The sun rose over the Alaskan wilderness, casting golden hues through the towering pines. The morning was crisp, the scent of damp earth, and wood smoke drifting through the air. Inside the cozy cabin, Sarah stretched as she blinked away the fatigue of the long night. She hadn't slept much, not with the tiny cub resting on their couch fighting for its life. Noah, still in his crib, babbled softly as he watched the bear cub, his tiny fingers gripping the wooden railing. Every now and then, he let out soft coos, almost as if he was speaking to it. Michael knelt beside the cub, checking its pulse, pressing the back of his hand against its belly. Warmer than last night. That was good. He reached for the dropper, carefully dripping more electrolyte-rich water into the cub's mouth. It stirred slightly, a small sign of progress, but one thought remained unspoken between them. What happens next? Sarah bit her lip. "Michael, if the cub survives, what do we do with it?" Michael hesitated. "We'll have to call wildlife services. They can take it to a rehabilitation center." Sarah glanced at the tiny bear, her expression conflicted. "And if its mother comes back?" Michael ran a hand through his hair. "That's the thing. She never really left." Sarah frowned. "What do you mean?" Michael rose to his feet and walked to the window. He pulled the curtain back slightly, revealing a shadow between the trees. Sarah's breath hitched. There, beyond the clearing, barely visible through the dense foliage, two dark eyes gleamed in the morning light. The bow, mother bear, she was still here. Sarah felt an odd mix of fear and awe. "She's been watching us all night?" Michael nodded. "I think so. She didn't leave her cub behind. She's trusting us to help it." A chill ran down Sarah's spine. This was unlike anything she had ever heard. Wild animals didn't trust humans. And yet this bear had broken every instinct, placing her cub in their care. The cub let out a weak whimper, shifting slightly under the blanket. Michael turned back to it, his mind racing. "If we want to give this cub a real chance, we might need to let the mother see it," he said. Sarah's eyes widened. "Are you crazy? What if she thinks we're stealing it?" Michael exhaled. "We'll take it slow. Let her see that we mean no harm." Sarah was terrified at the idea, but deep down, she knew Michael was right. The mother bear hadn't left. She was waiting. The morning sun crept higher into the sky, casting long beams of golden light across the dense forest. Inside the small cabin, the air was thick with tension. The tiny bear cub, now slightly stronger than the night before, rested on the couch, wrapped in a soft blanket. Michael glanced at the window again. The mother bear had not moved. She remained, just at the tree line, watching, waiting. Sarah paced near the fireplace, arms crossed tightly over her chest. "I still think this is insane," she muttered. "You really want to open the door with a grizzly bear standing right outside?" Michael didn't respond right away. He wasn't sure if this was a mistake, but deep in his gut he knew one thing. The bear had come here for a reason. She trusted them, and now she deserved to know her cub was still alive. He took a deep breath. "I won't take the cub outside," he said. "I'll just open the door a little, let her see it's okay." Sarah swallowed hard. "And if she charges?" "She won't," he said, hoping he was right. Sarah hesitated, then nodded. "I'll hold Noah." Michael knelt beside the couch and gently lifted the cub, cradling its tiny body in his arms. It let out a soft, weak whimper, but didn't resist. With a final glance at Sarah, he walked toward the door. His hands trembled as he gripped the handle, his heart beat loud in his ears. Then, he slowly pulled it open. The cold morning air rushed in. The mother bear stiffened at the movement. For a tense moment, no one moved. Michael took a slow, careful step forward, just enough to let her see the cub in his arms. The mother bear let out a deep, low rumble, a sound that sent chills down Michael's spine. Not a growl of aggression, but something else, something desperate. Her massive head tilted slightly, her dark eyes locked onto the tiny form in his arms. Then, she took a step forward. Michael's breath hitched. His instincts screamed at him to retreat, to shut the door. But he held firm. Another step. The bear was only a few feet away now. Michael could see every detail of her face, the scars, the dampness around her eyes, the way her nostrils flared as she took in her cub's scent. She let out a slow, shuddering breath. Michael knew that sound. Relief. He took a deep breath and knelt down, slowly placing the cub onto the wooden porch. The mother bear hesitated, then took the final step forward. With a gentleness that seemed impossible for a creature of her size, she nuzzled the tiny cub with her nose. The cub stirred, letting out a small cry. The mother bear rumbled again, this time softer, a sound so full of love that it nearly brought tears to Michael's eyes. Sarah, still inside, covered her mouth with her hand. Even Noah, too young to understand, watched in silent awe. Then, something happened that no one expected. The mother bear lifted her head, and for a brief, breathtaking moment, her eyes met Michael's, not as a beast staring down a human, but as one parent looking at another. "Thank you." No words were spoken. But the message was clear. Then, with a final nuzzle, she carefully picked up her cub by the scruff of its neck and turned toward the trees. Michael watched as she disappeared into the forest, the morning light casting long shadows in her wake, and, just like that, she was gone. Sarah let out a shaky breath. "Did that really just happen?" Michael exhaled. "Yeah." His voice was barely a whisper. "It did." He stepped back inside and shut the door, feeling the weight of what had just taken place settle deep in his chest. They had witnessed something extraordinary, and somehow he knew this wouldn't be the last time. The days after the mother bear's departure were filled with an eerie silence. The forest, which once felt vast and unpredictable, now carried an air of familiarity, as if something unspoken had connected the Mercers to it forever. Michael found himself looking out the window more often, expecting to see her again. But the mother bear didn't return. Not that day or the next. Sarah, too, felt the weight of the encounter. She often caught herself glancing toward the trees while rocking Noah to sleep, wondering if the bear remembered them as much as they remembered her. But life continued, and time, as it always did, moved forward. 5 years passed, and the tiny cabin that once felt like a fragile human outpost in the wilderness became a true home. Noah, now 6 years old, had grown into a curious, adventurous child, one with an undeniable connection to nature. Michael often watched with quiet amazement as his son interacted with the world around him. Birds didn't flee when Noah approached. Squirrels would stop and watch him rather than scurry away. Even deer, cautious by nature, seemed comfortable in his presence. It was something Sarah noticed too. "He's different," she murmured one evening as they sat on the porch watching Noah play near the tree line. "It's like the forest knows him." Michael exhaled. Maybe it does. And deep down he couldn't shake the feeling that it all traced back to that night. The night when a mother bear had trusted them. The night Noah had been a baby, reaching out toward a creature much bigger, much wilder, yet just as full of love. And then one autumn evening, everything changed again. It was just before sunset when Noah, now older and braver, wandered toward the tree line alone. Michael and Sarah had always warned him to be careful near the woods, but today he felt a pull. Whisper in the wind, a sense of something waiting. As he reached the clearing, his breath caught. There, just beyond the trees, stood a bear, but not just any bear. She was older now, her fur streaked with silver, her body broader with age. But those eyes, those deep, knowing eyes, Noah felt something stir in his chest. It was her, the mother bear. For a long, breathless moment, they just stood there, watching each other. Then, she took a slow step forward. Noah didn't move. Didn't feel fear, only recognition. Then, from behind the mother bear, another form emerged, a young bear cub. Noah's lips parted in wonder. A new generation. The mother bear let out a soft huff, a sound Noah somehow understood. It wasn't a warning, it was a greeting, a final acknowledgement of the bond between them. Then, as quietly as she had come, she turned and disappeared into the forest. Noah stood there for a long time, his heart racing. Then, without knowing why, he smiled. And from that moment on, he knew he would never be alone in the wild, because somewhere out there in the vastness of the forest, a mother bear still remembered, still watched, and still trusted forever.